For me, I really think it started just with culture, making it very normal. Smoking weed, smoking marijuana, everybody does it. It's okay, it's natural. But the difficult part is now we have products that are being sold in stores all across the United States, all across Texas, that are not natural. Right, but they're promoted to be. And so, especially for our youth, our young adults, my son at the age of 18, when he went off to college, he was smoking vape marijuana. And I've learned that this stuff it's chemicals. It is so highly potent and it is dangerous. It should not be sold, period. Not just about young adults and their protection, but adults as well. It's chemicals that's concentrated in a tube, and we're vaping it, we're ingesting it, and the impact that it had on his brain. He ended up being admitted into a psych ward. It was his first semester in college. He's studying for exams, and his brain, his mind he lost all control in the middle of exam week. I'm being called back home in Houston. He's out of state for college, and he's looking up to the sky, and he's telling me, "Mom, they're going to kill me." I didn't know what the situation was. Just fear that really struck me throughout the rest of that day and that evening. Friends, he's hallucinating. He's not understanding what's real, what's fake. But friends on campus, they were able to get him to the local emergency room. He couldn't tell you his name. He was screaming out loud that God is real and saying various things. He was breathing deeply. His heart was palpitating faster than he can control. And I had to make my way up there to see my son in a psychiatric ward. It was a very traumatizing experience, but all of this came about just the normalcy of marijuana and people not understanding the dangers. Toxicology report has been done for my son as of this week 4 times. And all 4 times, his blood work, the toxicology report confirmed that it was only THC in his system. Even while I'm having friends and loved ones, it can't just be marijuana. It has to be something else. Maybe it was laced. Even when he was at the hospital, they said, we want to rule out to be sure that there isn't any synthetic in his system. He may have gotten a hold of, synthetic, any kind of drug. And there's just all kind of things going through my mind. Everything but marijuana. And again and again and again this past week, his blood report, when he is in psychosis, doctors have confirmed that it's only THC in his system. Even with the blood toxicology report, if there were some substance that wouldn't show up in his system, they would be able to identify. If they couldn't actually identify it, they will at least be able to see that there's something foreign present in the blood that is not normal. They would have that much information. And so for the individuals who say that, there are unknown substances that, can hide out in the blood, sure, yeah. Doctors will know that they need that special test after the preliminary, right? And it's revealed that, okay, there's an additional substance and, we may not have it nailed down. We'll take that. It's kind of like levels, right? Science is quite advanced regardless of what people think they are, just to reveal all the detailed blood. They've studied it for decades. And so they're pretty well equipped to understand what's normal and what's not normal as far as presence in the blood. And so it started, I'm sure, with smoking just your normal weed, marijuana. But then he was exposed to the vape, which is a higher high, right? It's that much more potent. And with that, again, this stuff in the vape, it's been studied and shown that it can be 400 times or even more stronger than one joint. right? So in your vape, you're getting 400 joints, 600, 700, even now 800 with the different types of vape marijuana that they're creating times that potent. And I've learned from the psychiatrist who was in the psych ward, he taught me so much about how marijuana, the THC, how it connects to your fatty tissues. And most of our fatty tissues are in our brain. So you have the compound effect of the THC molecules attaching to the brain, and you get to the point to where certain receptors are blocked. And that's where you become out of touch with reality. And so when he's experiencing psychosis, there's a bit of truth and reality mixed with hallucinations. And so many times, if you don't know the person, you would think, oh, they're a little weird, but you wouldn't think much of it. But this past week, his psychosis got to the point to where he was biting nurses. They did have to sedate him. And so his first overdose was very bad. And this overdose, this is his fourth. In a psychiatric hospital, this has been the second worst. Just to think about the difference in who he is before, vibrant young man who at 16, at 14, at 13, he was holding sensible conversations and liked everywhere he went. He was a role model in his school. He was an ambassador, voted an ambassador by principals, assistant principals, and counselors in middle school and high school. He was on his principal's advisory board. The principal had parents advise him on different rules and procedures or, testing. And the principal also had a student advisory board, and my son was one of them. He was an exceptional kid. Teachers knew that they could rely on him. He was a leader wherever he went, and he was just likable. I would laugh sometimes growing up, hearing him on the phone, counseling his peers, talking to them about their problems. And it was just the sweetest thing. It was the sweetest thing. And sometimes it would be him. I would catch him using some of my words that I shared with him, some of my wisdom. It's like, you were listening, even though you pretended you weren't. And he went from that. We were very close, very close. We went from that to where, it's your closest loved ones that get the brunt of it, right? And so I was getting the brunt of the hate. He was telling me that I was trying to control him and I was manipulative and just everything being spewed at me. Over the years, last year, it began to get a little bit more physical when he would get upset about simple things. He wasn't working because mentally the brain is slowly limping back to normalcy after having an overdose on THC. So he wasn't working, but we still had expectations. Clean your room, wash the dishes, right? Take care of yourself. He would get upset, aggression. He had aggression in this phase that he's never had before. Angry. Aggressive, just aggressive in tone, aggressive with words, aggressive with body language. And what I've noticed with THC, it gets you really high and it drops you really low. So he would have his depressive moments when he's not smoking it, right? As part of that withdrawal symptoms, very low, very depressed. At one point, he was so depressed, he was walking the streets. He wasn't bathing. He wasn't hygiene. And this was a guy before. Loved style, loved how he looked, was focused on his appearance, did a little modeling and photography. And he went from walking the streets, wearing the same clothes for 7 days straight. Extreme body odor, right? And so drastic differences that I'm seeing in my son that I had never seen before. Even today, it just grieves me. It grieves me today. I'm concerned about his potential to be such a great contributor to, impact the people around him, whether it was through business, whether it was through sports. He was an athlete And because of THC and because of the overdose and because of his mental cognitive ability, he did have to take a medical withdrawal. He lost his scholarship for school, not once at his first school. Through his relationships, he was connected with another school, got another scholarship, and it happened again. Overdose in the hospital, lost his scholarship. The best way I can explain it is it's almost emotional turmoil, right? You want to provide that love and care and support in one moment when they are trying and you see the improvements, and then in the next moment you can be fearing for your life. There was a moment where, because he came home after midnight, we locked the doors. And when he came home, he raged. He couldn't get in. He got into my vehicle. He tore up my vehicle, tore off the rear view mirror. He tore off the, just different things. He tried to damage it as much as possible, and he blew the horn in the middle of the night for 2 hours. Neighbors, how embarrassing hearing this, not knowing what's going on. I didn't realize what had happened until the next morning, and I had to call the police. It's the last thing you want to do, is to call the police on your child. But I had just come to wit's end. Just the fear of not knowing where he's at sometimes. He'll call me in the middle of the night. I don't know where he's at. He's walking the streets. He's talking nonsense, right? Just saying, where should I go? I'm afraid. But you did this, and I'm upset. And I want to see my dad. And where are we going? And what are you going to do? And I'm just rambling on the phone, and you don't know where he is. And so the emotional turmoil, again, as a parent, wanting to provide the love, care, and support, and sometimes being fearful for my own safety. I have younger children as well, fearful for their safety, fearful for his safety. Right? He's a tall football player, 6'2", and fear of the police killing him. And so the emotional turmoil takes its toll. It takes its toll. Even right now, as I speak, he's in a psychiatric ward. There's just situations that arise, and you can just become almost emotionally numb. You just kind of freeze. You don't know what your next step should be. You're not thinking totally rational. I just, I have to really rely on my husband during these times, because I can't think straight when my son is in the middle of cannabis-induced psychosis, because it brings up a flood of good and bad emotions. After the first experience, I'm a researcher, always been, no matter what it is. And so just researching online, I did run across Every Brain Matters as an organization, and I would watch videos. And when my son was in the home, I would turn up the videos a little bit so he could hear from others who had recovered from cannabis-induced psychosis. I was learning from mothers, parents, medical professionals, and so I've learned just so much. In the beginning, you're at a loss, just because of, again, everything that I knew about cannabis, right? Everything, individuals listening to this, everything you know about cannabis, marijuana. You're in a situation that it completely contradicts, right? And so it flips your world upside down, and you're learning the possibilities. You're learning about psychosis. You're learning about paranoia. You're learning about the brain and the trauma that it experiences, what that recovery process will be like, right? And the support that individuals need. So I have learned about medicine, different medications that can work well depending upon your blood type, because individuals are different. I've learned how to navigate the medical industry. That is something that is very difficult when you're dealing with any type of mental disorder. You have to advocate. You have to know how to press for information and ask for information, and you have to know how to look for certain services and know when those services are not present. And so there's so many things to just learn. And also how to care for yourself, right? We hear that. I have met so much resistance. Again, as a mother, experiencing this was last year in 2024. I was in the hospital. A police officer had picked up my son because he was jumping on top of a vehicle and opening doors in the middle of psychosis. The officers realized once they had him into custody that, okay, he's not mentally right. And my son, even when he's not mentally stable, he knows to give them my name and number. Thank the Lord. But the officer called me. He said, "Ma'am, we're taking him to a local hospital." When I showed up, I was there talking to the doctor, and I was explaining to the doctor about his history. That doctor looked me in my eye and he said, "Ma'am, I'm a narcotics specialist, doctor, something, something, long title." And he said, "Ma'am, this behavior that we're seeing is not from marijuana." Right? We're going to run his blood work, and we're going to send his paperwork to a judge to involuntarily admit him into the psychiatric ward. And he was just so condescending towards me. A doctor, a professional, very trained, right? And they have no clue that cannabis can cause what they're seeing many times. That was because they were going to involuntarily admit him into the hospital. I was actually happy about that. Okay, get him into the hospital, get him into a program, get him the help that he needs. This hospital, once they saw that it was only THC in his system, they discharged him the next morning. So hopeful and then thoroughly disappointed. Oh, I tried to get after him and he knew I did. Of course, he's dodging me, using his nurses as a shield. I was never able to talk to him after that. I wanted to pin him in a corner and educate him on a thing or two, right? Exactly what you told me it was not. It came out that exactly it is, right? And he saw the behavior from my son, right? Not in his right mind, psychosis, paranoia, right? And you see that it's only THC in his system. And so just understanding the marijuana that we all grew up with, the plant, in its natural form is totally different from these products that are being sold in stores, that are being manufactured in labs, right? They're being manufactured in labs, not in America, in other countries. And there are, in addition to the THC levels are just off the chart. Nothing our brains and our bodies was ever designed to handle. Right. And so when it comes to individuals who are, pro marijuana, when we're talking about the natural plant, that's something totally different. But when we're talking about these products that are being sold in stores, that's what we are after. And that's what should not be sold in stores, period. I'll tell you, the medical industry, they are not prepared for this wave that this marijuana industry is bringing. It will have a profound effect on the medical industry. I have had experiences in different states, in different hospitals, and there is no one experience that is the same. When it comes to the professionals, when it comes to their education that they provide for you. Some individuals, some hospitals have just provided him information on managing stress and anxiety. How helpful is that? Not very helpful. Right? The first hospital was the most helpful. The education, cannabis induced psychosis. I got that verbiage from that hospital. that actually knew what this issue was that he was dealing with that caused his psychosis, that causes paranoia. They talked about the recovery process. They talked about, it takes a while for the THC molecules to process in the body and be released from the brain, months, which is why they recommended his medical discharge from school. Slow to think, right? Within that next month, asking him a simple question. What did you do with your cell phone? Where's your bag? I put it in the just slow response, or the normal sharpness that an individual, and my son, he was an engineering major, sharp, witty, giving sound, wise advice to friends, and going to a state of being slow to respond, not thinking clearly. And so unfortunately, because the medical industry is not very well equipped to handle this, so many professionals are not educated on cannabis-induced psychosis and THC and its effects on the brain. There's bad information many times that they're giving families, and they will discharge them from the hospital and not give families any resources. And so for individuals who are watching, videos like this, educating themselves is so key. I want to encourage people to research THC's effects on the brain. I want to encourage people to be mindful and be aware of the change in behaviors of friends and families, members around them. Every time I'm able to share my story, there's always one or two people who are connecting the dots of what I'm sharing with a friend or a family member, that they've seen this exact same behavior, but they didn't have the information, they didn't have the education, they couldn't pinpoint it, or they just bypassed it. It's just something simple. No. Action is needed. Action is needed to help advocate for our loved ones, help direct them to a place of getting substance abuse help. And so if I had known then what I know today, my response would have been different. Being aware, just seeing vapes, just educating ourselves how dangerous they are. I've talked to lots of adults who would like to sleep at night and who are dealing with stress, and they're on a path. I was thinking about smoking a vape. I was told by a friend that, it's a great way to relieve stress. But they've seen the change in it. They've heard it. And so it's just like, oh my gosh, how is this available in stores? These are professionals who could lose their families. There are examples of people losing businesses. And again, they were on a path thinking it's safe, thinking that the government is protecting us. There wouldn't be anything harmful sold in stores. That's what my son was thinking. When it comes to the marijuana industry, especially when there aren't any rules, we as humans, unfortunately, selfish ambition can get in the way. And it's come to a point where it's profits over people, right? The potent vapes that they are creating is to satisfy the urge, right? Keep a continuous buyer. Profits, revenue, right? So it's all linked. It's all linked together, but it's profits over people. And it doesn't matter who's damaged along the way as this industry amasses profits. I'm a firm believer, if you see something that's not right, you say something. And so that is the stance. That's my way of, I'm in a situation with my son where, he's an adult. I have very little control. And I feel hopeless sometimes. I can't give him the help that he needs. And this is my way of doing something and helping in some way and preventing another family from experiencing what I've experienced. This is my way of doing that by taking action. That's the type of person I am. I know there are some individuals who experiencing what I've experienced, it can take the breath out of you, right? And you're head down deep into your own situation, trying to find a resource, trying to find an answer. And so I'm doing this also for the parents who don't have the strength to speak out.
So what other kind of things are you doing?
I am taking my story and my message to the Capitol in my state. I am sharing my story, just like on this platform, for millions of other people to hear it. I hope that through my message, they're able to connect the dots and it draws their attention to a situation, to a person who needs their help. I want to add one more piece, connecting the dots. Connecting the dots, it took years for me to realize the sweet smell from my son's room was the vape marijuana, right? And so there may be some individuals at home, they're smelling a sweet smell that they don't normally smell. Sometimes it smells like cocoa, sometimes it smells like cologne, different smells. It took me years. Some nights, and the smell would just linger in his room for like days. He would be gone for 2 days, but I would smell this smell. It's like, what is it? And I finally realized it's the vapes that he's smoking in my home while he's supposed to be recovering from cannabis induced psychosis and not smoking marijuana. But when I smell that smell, it always confirmed why his behavior when he was on a good path towards improving his aggression, his paranoia, and just different scenarios that he would start to talk about. Again, connecting the dots. And so his change in behavior I would always smell the smell of vape marijuana in his room, and he would find ways. He would have friends deliver it to him, even when he wasn't supposed to leave the house. Connecting the dots is key.